Hello, everybody. It's me, the Nutty Professor, and that was Agita. It was just foot petting her, and now she's going into her room. Notice something: room door wide open, and so is the baby's room door. So we've got one baby there in the white chair, and we get another baby. It just went into the room because he's a bit camera shy. And I've done a lot of taping already, and they posed, but now he's like, he doesn't want to be seen. He's gone under the bed. You can see his ears. So, but the door's so wide open, and this has been a shift, a big shift over the last few days. And in the morning, and even at night, I do not close the doors. The babies are not shut in with me, and the babies choose where they're going to sleep. So last night, Agita was sleeping in her tent, and one of the babies was sleeping on the bed on that corner, just a foot or two from his sister. So this is a huge shift in our family. So that's the good news. And I wasn't going to say good news, bad news. Actually, the first few videos I started for this, I said, I've got bad news. But I'm going to shift this a little bit. Good and bad, pairs of opposites, all of that stuff. But the positive aspect of all of this is, yes, family togetherness time has expanded, and Agita is accepting her brothers much more than ever before. Now, what I was going to call bad news is that what led to all of this was there has been another excursion. Actually, a couple. Actually, kind of a series. But anyway, the last podcast, it was sort of, I claimed it was a victory because I had a close call and it was exactly 8 weeks and I had the chance to, go party, and I didn't. So that was almost a week ago. That was a week ago. So, and then after that, on the weekend, I had a sort of a falling out with a former friend who wasn't a friend anymore anyway, and about confidentiality. And I'm not blaming that person, and I'm not going to say he or she, confidentiality, all of that stuff. But it didn't really help my mood. And, I think... I've talked about these issues before, and that's what makes these podcasts very difficult, because I want to talk about my experiences, but at the same time, I do want to respect confidentiality, and particularly the people that I meet in the so-called underworld with the binges, because there might be some illegal stuff going on there, and I don't want to, incriminate anyone or incriminate myself, So I have to be very careful, and with my friends, even with cats, I change names. My friend's cat in the other province, I call him Flame, but that's not his real name. And the rescue cats I volunteered to drive, I used to talk about Papaya. That wasn't his real name. So this person, a couple of years ago, we had a falling out over the whole confidence, and it was a civilian, not a binger friend. But we had a falling out, and then he or she contacted me again, and we had some contact. And then on the weekend, he or she said, I want to call you, but I don't want you to mention me in podcasts or in your journal entries. And I kind of triggered me because I'm like going, look, I try to be as careful as possible in podcasts, So, and even when I mention my friends, I mention them very anonymously. I won't mention anything personal. And the fact that you have to tell me that, obviously you don't trust me, So, and you don't have a right to tell me what I can and can't write in my journal entries anyway. That's personal, private for myself. Now, there's a lot of material in there that could be used towards manuscripts, but I haven't published any of my writing. I've got so many stories about my own. And I also said to this person, don't flatter yourself. I mean, I have a lot more interesting people to write about than you, the people that I meet in the underground on my excursions, I've said this before, the people that I call the so-called non-turning back strugglers, remarkable people, really courageous. I mean, living on the edge. I mean, it takes a courage and a stamina that is almost unimaginable by civilians, So, and I've called myself a tourist in that world. in an earlier podcast, and somebody said you're not really a tourist because you've got a passport. That's because when I go there, very hard for me to come back. Very hard, So anyway, and I'm not saying that incident triggered the Sunday's excursion, but it didn't help, and it also highlights this whole confidentiality issue, that my hands are kind of tied in talking here because I don't want to reveal too much information, and I can in my writing. And then sort of fictionalize it and publish it as fiction, but I haven't got to that stage. I've had a couple of editors. The first one wanted me to go in a clinical direction, that this is what I'm doing, and I was an addict and now I'm not an addict, and this is good, and that's not my thing. And then the second one got a bit scared by the content because it does deal with the underworld, some illegal-ish issues, and she didn't want to be associated with it, So I kind of abandoned trying, and it's just such a hassle. You gotta get an agent and a publisher, you gotta, all of that stuff with inquiry letters and this and that, and I just stuck to the podcast. But as I said, the podcast, my hands are tied a little bit in terms of what I can and can't say. And I'm willing to talk a little bit more details here. And my analyst asked me, why are you willing to share more in your podcast? Is it a warning? You want to warn other people? And I go, not really. I mean, yes, it could be. I mean, my very few viewers, if somebody watches this and goes, oh, shit, I didn't want to end up like the Nutty Professor, I don't want to end up an addict, and, if it could be a warning, But that's not really my intention. I said before, the beginning of these podcasts, I said I have three audiences in mind. One is the people that I call the turning back strugglers, the AA, I think, calls us recovering addicts, but I don't like the recovery model. So one group is the turning back strugglers, and people who've gone to the edge but want to come back for certain reasons, So, and if anything that I do that helps or doesn't help, helps other people, if they can see what works for me and what doesn't work for me, and the fact that I haven't gone 12 steps, and I did make 20 months, entirely on my own, using my own system of PATAP. So if that helps some people stop, or gives them ideas, fine. I don't have a problem with that, But then the second group is the non-turning back strugglers, the people on the path, the explorers of shadow, the psychonauts, so to speak, the ones who are exploring their shadow and going right into it and living in it, and don't want to turn back, can't turn back, or don't want to, So either way, anyone who is in that world and is not turning back, fine. I want to do these for those people as well because I really, really admire them. It takes a lot of courage and guts and stamina to live in that world day by day. You survive by the skin of your teeth. The civilians have no idea what that world is like, what it is like to live in shadow, on a daily basis, So if something that I talk about here, they find interesting, I'm talking about that world non-judgmentally. I'm not necessarily saying you must stop, And then the third group are the civilians, who, tend to be judgmental a bit, quote junkies, unquote, and I'm willing to use that word, But I've met people with integrity, and there's a code of sorts, and there is you can't judge people by what they do, and what they explore, There's good and bad everywhere. Now I'm using those terms, pairs of opposites again. So that's another, But anyway, that's the big difference between my approach and 12-step, because 12-step says, you have to stop. And the last step is once you've, prayed and you've done all of that and you've apologized and you've done all those things, you've said that, the only way you can stop is through your cravings is through help from the higher power, and you've done all of those steps and you get to the last step. Then the last step is to go convert others, is to take your word to suffering addicts, I think is 12th step, And I will never do that. I mean, if you're going, I'd say go for it, If you don't want to turn back, you're doing whatever you need to do, legal or illegal, to, support your, whatever it is you're doing, do it, and there are people that live their entire lives, really best morals, So live to 92, So I'm not comparing myself to Burroughs, He killed his wife while on heroin, but that's not my thing, But anyway, so just go for it, And if you end up dead, you end up in jail. That's your choice, And if you may not, it's you may stop, you may not stop, but it's up to you, Just keep going, So I will never tell anyone to stop. Now in PATAP, I've said that I want to stop myself. I want to turn back, because I have my list. And at that time, 4 years ago, the number one item on my list was Agita, my cat. And now it's so much more powerful because I have 3 kids. I have Agita, and Elsie, and Finn. I have the babies, So I have the 3 kids. They're the biggest pushes, However, the pulls are getting stronger and stronger. So those people who have been following this know that I made 19.5 months clear. I started volunteering at a cat shelter. I adopted my babies. I rechanneled, during the pandemic. When I could, I would eat out. I would, go to see movies. I bought another car. I bought a couple of cars, actually, over the last couple of years. I rechanneled. I've done all of that stuff. But in September, I had a recursion. I call it recursion rather than relapse. And then in December, I had another. And then in January, I had a couple. And then they're getting stronger. They're getting more and more powerful. And that's the thing. As you go further into shadow, and you explore more and more of your own personal shadow. There is a very famous podcaster, also had been a psych prof, who writes about Jungian shadow in terms of archetypes and mythology and stuff. And he's a bit more political. I'm not political, and I talk about my own experiences with shadow. So I'm a little different here, and I have a lot fewer viewers, and I'm okay with that. So the whole thing with exploration of shadow is the deeper you go into shadow, the harder it is. The idea is to integrate. But it's a difficult process, and I've talked about this in some of the previous podcasts. So anyway, shadow is getting stronger. And the pulls are actually stronger now than they've ever been. In PATAP, I talk about day at a time, hour at a time, minute at a time. It's a minute at a time, So here we are, Now, I'm not going to, go, this is bad, I just had something actually very positive happened a little while ago. I had a very nice conversation with my cat rescuer friend in the other province. And this is the one who has an informal cat shelter. I don't even name the province, and I do talk about her cat, Flame, not his real name, one of her semi-feral cats, who has been clear longer than I have, but I think that's probably because of the weather. He had a recursion about the same time I did. He went, he disappeared for 3 or 4 days, then he showed up very, very hungry and tired, then he disappeared again 3 or 4 days. But he's been staying in the shelter for quite some time now. But it's very, very cold there. So anyway, and when I talked to her, I did ask her, we were a bit stumped about what I'm going to do next. And I did ask her, I said, can you please talk to Flame and ask him for advice? Yeah, and she said she'll do that. So anyway, I'm getting advice from a cat. But anyway, the whole thing here is that, and I had a very nice conversation. First time I've actually spoken to her in about 20 years. We've been in touch again for the last 3 years, but it's all been email. And it was very different to talk about stuff with her. And some of the really, really dark stuff, which I will not mention here, obviously, but some of the really dark stuff, we're actually laughing about it, because there is a very dark humor to this, So, and if you've been following my podcast, you know that I don't use the recovery model. I use Campbell's return model. The hero goes, or anti-hero, goes to the underground, goes to the other world, wherever, and doesn't want to come back sometimes because that world has its unimaginable pleasures and its unspeakable horrors, and the unimaginable pleasures are truly unimaginable. And it's sometimes very difficult to separate the unimaginable horrors, the unimaginable delights from the unspeakable horrors. The unspeakable horrors are pretty unspeakable, but the delights are unimaginable, So, and it's a very powerful combination, So sometimes the hero or anti-hero doesn't want to return, but has to return, because there's tasks that have to be completed here. And that was my, one of my steps was, PATAP steps was, step number 2 had been, I want to come back to publish, and I want to come back to, do my podcasts, and of course, look after my kids, which is, also number 1. So, that was my number 2 step. My number 3 step back then stage was my friends, and now, friendships have changed slightly. I've got my 2 cat rescuer friends, the one I've just been talking about in the other province, and my local one. And when I was talking to the out of province one, she was saying it's not really a coincidence that my 2 people I'm in most contact with these days are dedicated cat rescuers, So I've got my 2 cat rescuers friends, and then I've got my former student podcaster who is very busy, but I still hear from him from time to time. He goes, "Hey, Prof, congratulations on 8 weeks," stuff like that, and so he's he's there. My former colleague friend, the one who had the dream about me, is a little dog that fell off the wall, and then she prayed, and I survived, and she made it very clear that she doesn't pray for me in real life because she knows I wouldn't approve. But and in the dream, I was a little dog, and she apologized for that too. She said, "I'm sorry, I dreamed of you as a dog, but it's my unconscious." So anyway, I didn't mind because it wasn't intentional. So anyway, she had a dream of me as a dog, and then but she prayed, and I survived, and then she prayed again because it happened again. I fell again, and then she prayed, and then I survived, and then it happened again, and I limped away. This little white dog, limping away, and then my super cat comes to save me. So I'm like going, "Where's my super cat?" But my babies, my 3 babies, my Agita and my babies are my super cats, and my friends. My friends are also super cats, the cat rescuer people and the non-cat people. So so that was my 3rd stage. My 3rd step, I think, was the support from not necessarily self-help groups or anything like that, but from one's own friends, and also my parents are in another country. I haven't told them about any of this because, they don't need to worry about it. They're in their 90s and, they're being very well looked after. But the only other 3 human relatives I have contact with are technically my cousins who live here, but I call one my niece, and then her son and daughter, who I call niece and nephew, so it gets a little complicated. But anyway, I don't see them often. Christmas and my birthday, and sometimes in between when I really need help. And These days I seem to need help. But anyway, and she's always there for me. So after my excursion on Sunday night, and I lost my phone, and then it was not in good shape, and she helped me with some damage control. And she was there for me. And then on Tuesday, I went and got a new phone. I have located the other phone, by the way, and I'm trying to get it back. And that's a long story. Again, I'm not going to go into that. So on Tuesday, I got another phone. First thing I did was contact people from the other world and go on another excursion. So Shadow's getting stronger. So and then on Tuesday we went on another longer excursion. And again, I will say this much: it's a dual addiction. So the substances that I've been doing are getting a little trickier. Remember, I've talked about Carrie Fisher and how her heart attack was triggered by a couple of substances. I've been partying with those at times. So it's getting a little dangerous here. And I added another one to the mix too. And then there's a certain activity, consenting adults, all that. But there is a certain activity while on, kind of underworldy, shadowy activity while partying. Quote, partying, unquote, So that's as much as I'll say. I don't want to go further than that, But that's what makes it doubly powerful. It's a very, very powerful addiction, And that's what my analyst was saying, if you want to talk about this or reveal it, is it to help others? And I don't know if I'm not a warning. I mean, it's up to everyone, If you want to turn back, do it with awareness. The whole consulting alone thing, try to be careful, don't drive under the influence, stuff like that, And I am trying to be careful not to get a heart attack and die because of my kids, And my friend in the other province, when she first heard about it, she actually started crying because she's a big worrier. And not just about me, my kids, because she knows how much I love my kids, and my kids having to be rehomed, all of that stuff. So this whole thing with so a shout out to my friends, to my niece, and my out of province friend. When the first excursion happened, she maybe after the second, she said. She understands that I can't go 12 steps. 12 steps, not my thing. And she goes, but whatever you're doing now is not working either. It worked for a while. It worked for a couple of years. PATAP, my individual program, worked for a couple of years. It worked during the pandemic. And the kids, again, adopting the babies was the hugest thing for me. And then I rechanneled with buying the car, bought the Mini last year, bought the S430 this year, So rechanneling. But this time, when I opened the door on the Sunday night, how I used to talk about the werewolf? Some other creature is now come through a door. I opened another door, and I'm not sure what creature it is, but it's actually far hungrier, far more powerful than a werewolf. So it could be a dragon, Dragons are, they could be benign, but they could be kind of, So we're into sort of the dragon energy here, or even more powerful, some kind of demon, I don't know, So I asked my friend to check with her son, who plays a lot of video games. He might know. Okay. So I've opened the door to an insatiable animal, and but I'm not going to freak out of this. I'm not going to pray. I'm not going to go to 12-step meetings. I'm not going to freak out. I'm just going to go day by day. It's not even day by day. It's hour by hour. It's not even hour by hour. It's minute by minute. So I'm just going to go minute by minute and just try to be as aware as possible, try to be as careful as possible, be aware of my pushes, be aware of the pulls, and, I am in contact with my friends, they know about it. And my friend, the one I talked to, she was a bit stumped. She says, I don't know what to say to you, and I said, look, I'm going to do this, I could hit a wall, but that's not the best way to stop because, the wall could be a bad wall, It could, we could be coming up to, losing my phone wasn't enough of a wall, but I don't want to hit like a heart attack wall or an arrest wall, Those are pretty bad walls, So, but, this push with the babies and Agita, this is huge. The fact that, and they know I've been struggling, and they know that something has shifted, and they know that I've been going through some issues. And can you imagine Agita is in the same room with her brothers? So, here we are. The Nutty Professor is once again, and I don't even want to say battling, because that's, I used to talk about battling the werewolf, and I got the, those of you who follow these things, 30 to 50 of you. Actually, I think I have 50 to 80 viewers, sometimes less, sometimes more. But that's my ego chair. I'm not even in it now, I'm here on the sofa, kind of stretched out like a cat, So, I'm being a feral cat. Remember my dusty dumpster rodent weasel path? The sort of trickster was a term suggested by somebody that I encountered in the underworld, and somebody who I think is, unfortunately hasn't made it back, to the world at all. So, as far as I know. So anyway, that's that whole thing in terms of, the return of the hero, the anti-hero, and we've got trickster energy here, we've got shadow energy, and you get my spirit animals, my cats, even though my cats are not feral, they're house cats, but I am a bit of a feral cat, I'm a bit of a feral cat, a bit of a dusty dumpster rodent weasel. So we got this dusty dumpster rodent weasel energy is kind of back, mixed with this very powerful creature thing, which I'm not sure what it is, the dragon thing, So, and I want to give, again, a shout out to my friends and my niece, for being there for me, and I'm just going to keep going, as I've said, I don't judge others, and I'm not going to judge myself because, I'm not going to say what I'm doing is bad or what I've done is bad. The pull has taken me to certain places and certain insights, So one of the things I'm doing with it is, is sharing what I can in these podcasts, and as I've said, not just as a warning, Now, there's a lot of stories that I would like to tell, but again, privacy issues. So those will have to be written and then, fictionalized and stuff. But for now, I'll just say that I'll keep you posted, and that I'm going to keep going with this. I'm going to try to turn back. That is my goal. Because it is a bit dangerous. It is a bit dangerous. And I have my my kids. And my friends now, I think, are number 2 rather than number 3, and I do want to publish and all of that stuff, So a big shout out to my cat rescuer friend in the other province, to my local cat rescuer friend, and to all my other, 3, my 3 other friends, and my niece and her kids, and to dusty dumpster rodent weasels everywhere. And as I've said, in a previous podcast on the shadow, I dedicated my my podcast to the people who are not turning back, because I have a tremendous admiration for the people who live in that, by the skin of their teeth. It's a daily grind, and they're truly explorers of the psyche, of the shadow, So shout out to them, So from the Nutty Professor, bye for now. We'll keep you posted.